I pushed open the school doors and froze. The hallway was bright white, empty, and it echoed with every heartbeat in my ears. The sharp smell of bleach stung my nose. Halfway down the hall, a teacher knelt beside my son. Blood soaked the towel pressed against his left hand and dripped onto the clean floor tiles. My legs moved before my mind caught up. I reached him, saw the deep cuts across his fingers, and felt the world tilt. Nothing. Law school, court battles, late-night crime scenes. Nothing prepared me for this. The vice principal stood nearby, garden shears still shaking in her grip, her name badge from the neighborhood HOA pinned to her sweater like a joke. I looked from the metal blades to my child's pale face and back again. Tell me, if someone did this to your kid, and you knew the law better than anyone in that room, what would you do next? My name's Daniel, and I've spent most of my adult life working in the justice system. I used to be a prosecutor. Now I work in the state attorney's office. I've seen some terrible things. Crime scenes, courtroom lies, families torn apart. But nothing ever hit me like what happened to my own son. His name is Kingsley. He's 9 years old, deaf since birth, and probably the most gentle kid you'll ever meet. He loves drawing animals, solving puzzles, and walking through our backyard barefoot just to feel the grass. He doesn't talk like most kids, but he shows everything in his face. His hands speak for him, until they couldn't. He's also got this thing for origami. Frogs, mostly. Not the basic ones either. I'm talking about the kind that actually jump when you press the back. He folds them with this serious little look on his face, tongue poking out, and then grins when they hop across the table. Those frogs were his pride, and he used to hand them out to anyone who smiled at him. Our life at home was quiet, slow, and safe, until the day it wasn't. Until someone decided that a child like mine was too much of a problem. Karen lived right across the street from us. You know the type. Always watching, always judging, always ready to complain about something. Her hair was always pulled back into this tight silver bun, and she carried a clipboard like it was part of her body. If your grass was too long, or your trash cans were out 5 minutes early, you'd get a notice from her. One time she knocked on our door just to say our mailbox looked too modern for the neighborhood. I usually kept my distance. I figured it was just her way of feeling important. What I didn't know, what still makes my stomach turn, is that she also worked at Kingsley's school. Not just as a helper or a part-time staffer. She was the vice principal. The same woman who measured the height of my hedges was now standing in hallways where my son spent most of his day. At first, it just seemed like a weird coincidence. But then Kingsley signed to me that she took his markers. He looked upset, but I didn't push too hard. I should have. Looking back, there were signs. Her fake smile, the way she talked down to kids who were different. I saw it. I just didn't think she'd ever go that far. There were signs. I see that now, and it eats at me. Kingsley started acting differently a few weeks before it happened. He used to come home smiling, showing me the drawings he made at school. Then suddenly, he stopped. He'd go quiet. I caught him flinching once when I mentioned her name. Another time, he signed that she made him sit alone during lunch. But when I asked why, he just shrugged and looked away. Then there was the bruise. A small one, on his right knuckle. I asked what happened, and he signed something about tripping. But the way he avoided my eyes. I knew he wasn't telling me everything. Still, I let it go. I also started getting strange emails from the school, worded carefully but cold. Things like concerns about behavior or non-compliance during group time. Kingsley? He's the quietest kid in that school. I emailed back asking for details. No reply. When I asked Karen about it during pickup one day, she said, "Kids like him need stricter rules." She said it with this tight smile, like she was doing me a favor. I felt something was wrong. Deep down, I knew. But I doubted myself. And I shouldn't have. It was just after noon when I got the call. The school nurse said something about an incident, and that I needed to come right away. Her voice was flat, like she was reading off a script. I grabbed my keys and didn't even change out of my lunch-stained shirt. I drove faster than I should have. When I got there, I saw Kingsley sitting on a bench in the main hallway, his small frame hunched over, holding a towel to his hand. The white towel was soaked in red. His fingers, his beautiful, expressive fingers, were bleeding through it. A staff member stood off to the side, pale and silent. Karen was already there, arms crossed, eyes hard. She looked at me and said, "He grabbed the shears. It was an accident." Her voice had no panic, no regret, just cold control. I spotted the garden shears nearby, half hidden behind the trash can. Rusty, sharp, totally out of place in a school hallway. I knelt next to Kingsley, trying to stay calm, trying to breathe. He was shaking. With his good hand, he started signing slowly. She grabbed me. She did this. Then one last sign. Snip. I looked up at Karen, and I knew right then, this wasn't an accident. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, something in me just switched. I stood up, steady, and asked the staff who witnessed it to start writing down everything they saw. Names, times, exact words. Karen tried to speak again, but I cut her off. I wasn't talking to her. I called the police before I even walked out the door. Not as a dad, but as someone who knew exactly what this was and how the system worked. I told them they needed to send someone now, not later. This wasn't a school problem. It was a criminal case. I called Detective Eugene on the way to the hospital. We'd worked together before, and I trusted him. I gave him the quick version. He didn't ask if I was sure. He just said, "Send me everything you have." I could hear him already writing it up on his end. "This wasn't an accident," I said. "This was battery, and not just that. She did this to a disabled child." Eugene's voice didn't flinch. "Then we treat it like that." The next few days felt like a blur, but every move had a purpose. Detective Eugene started talking to the staff one by one. Most were scared to say much, but one teacher, Miss Delgado, broke down in tears. She told him straight, "She hated your son." Said he was a distraction, said he didn't belong in a normal class. That alone hit me hard. But we weren't done. We pulled the school's hallway camera footage. Most angles were useless, but one showed Karen walking quickly down the hall, carrying something wrapped in a towel. A few seconds later, she tossed it into the trash outside the main office. When they checked, the garden shears were still there. She hadn't even tried to hide them. At home, Kingsley drew a picture without me asking. He sat at the kitchen table, silent, and just started sketching. When he was done, he handed it to me. It was her, Karen, with the shears in her hand and a red, angry face. The kind of anger kids don't forget. The medical report sealed it. The cuts weren't rough or accidental. They were clean, straight slices, like someone aimed. We weren't guessing anymore. We had facts, and she had nowhere left to hide. Karen was arrested right outside her house, still in her robe, yelling about how unfair it was. A few neighbors stood in their yards, watching. Some looked shocked, others didn't. She was well known for all the wrong reasons. They put her in the back of the squad car while she shouted that it was all a setup, that she'd done nothing wrong. But we had proof. Her clipboard didn't matter now. In court, she pleaded not guilty, claimed Kingsley was difficult, that the school didn't support her, that he must have grabbed the shears himself. The courtroom was quiet as she said those things, so calm, so sure of herself. Like we'd all just forgotten the blood and the fear in my son's eyes. Then we started laying it out. I testified first. Eugene followed with the timeline, the statements, the footage. Miss Delgado took the stand and told the jury exactly what she'd heard and seen over the past few months. And when we showed the jury Kingsley's drawing, Karen with the shears, red lines for fingers, her face twisted. She stood up in the middle of it, pointed at him, and screamed, "He's lying!" The courtroom froze, and just like that, she sealed her own fate. The judge didn't waste words. He looked straight at Karen and said she was guilty of assaulting a disabled child. 10 years in prison. No chance of parole for the first 6. She broke down crying right there in court. I didn't. I just looked at my son, who sat quietly beside me, holding one of his little paper frogs in his good hand. He didn't smile, but he looked calm, like something heavy had finally been lifted. Kingsley's fingers took time to heal. 2 of them don't move like they used to, but he's figured out new ways to fold paper. His frogs still hop across the table, maybe not as high, but they hop. And he still hands them out, especially to kids who sit alone. After the trial, the community moved fast. Karen was removed from the HOA board within days. Her nameplate was taken down at the school too, and the new principal came to our house just to say sorry. No cameras, no press, just a real apology. Life didn't go back to normal, but it moved forward, and that was enough. If you have a child with special needs, listen to them, believe them, even when it's hard, even when others try to make you second-guess what you see in their eyes. Kingsley didn't have a loud voice, but his silence told me everything I needed to know. I just wish I had acted sooner. Justice isn't only something that happens in courtrooms. Sometimes it starts at the dinner table, when a child draws a picture or signs a word that doesn't make sense until it does. It's in the small choices we make to protect the people we love. If this were your child, what would you have done? I want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Share this story. If you've ever been through something like this, where someone crossed a line and thought they'd get away with it, let me know. You're not alone. My son still makes paper frogs. They don't jump as high as they used to, but they're still his. And to me, they're perfect.